All right, cool, awesome. And you said your is that L.M. Archer?
Archer.
Okay,
Yes.
all righty. So
But you
that's
can
I'm
call me
assuming.
Lena if that's easier.
I don't know, call you whatever you want to be called. You want to be called
Lena's fine.
all right. We go off what we identify as in this day and age.
Good.
And I identify as that. So you call me that now. Which whatever people.
Yeah.
No, but all right, let's get started. Three, two, oh, a little bit. You don't have it's not censored. Say whatever you want to say, how you want to say it. I don't get offended. Uh that's why we here. If it
Okay.
sounds offensive, if you think it's offensive, just explain yourself. That's why you're here to explain why somebody may take that offensive. You know what I'm saying?
Works for
Uh
me.
all right. Three, two, one. How you doing, people? Donnie from Whatever Talk, but this is Challenge Our Beliefs. I recently changed the name to Challenge Our Beliefs because I thought about this. I'm challenging my beliefs as well. It's not just me challenging your beliefs. Because my beliefs are just as flawed as yours, is how I think of it. So yeah, I have a guest with me, L.M. Archer. Did I say that right?
Hello.
All right. I don't want to mess up two letters. That'll really make me look like a reread.
No.
So you are author. You write books, stories.
Yes, I am an author. I write romance books, LGBTQ romance books specifically. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that's my night job. I have a day job, but let's not talk about that. It's much more boring.
It's not valid. I mean, it's not relevant right now, unless you want to make it relevant.
Not really.
Yeah, cool. I don't like talk about my day job too. It involves me on my knees. I don't like that.
Fair enough. I mean, if you want to talk about that, I can use it as
No.
inspiration.
I'm a merchandiser, people. Merchandiser. Oh man, that's funny. I said I never get a job on my knees ever again.
I mean, you got to do what you got to do. Whatever
Yeah,
pays
yeah.
the bills. I
Hey,
don't shame. I don't shame people who have to be on their knees for their job.
I don't shame. I just make fun. Yeah, but that's cool. So, how long you been writing?
I've been writing all my life. I didn't start seriously writing until like 5-ish or 6 years ago. It was actually my New Year's resolution
Mm-hmm.
several years ago to do more creative writing. I've written poetry most of my life, but I wanted to get into like longer works. So I started an LM romance novel called Full for the Summer, where these two boys meet at a summer, like at a party to kick off the summer.
Yeah, you sound robotish.
That's weird.
Uh,
I'm in my
maybe it's my headphones. All right, try to say something now.
Hi, can you hear me better?
Yeah, it's the same thing, but it could be just my headphones.
Okay,
I
fingers
yeah.
crossed
So
it is because I
yep.
don't want to sound robotic. But yeah, so a few years ago, I decided to just give writing a try again, and people really liked it. So I published my first book in March, or no, June of 2020, and I've have 4 books and a novella published now. So I've been writing for pretty much my whole life.
Awesome. I just started dabbling in poetry this year, like earlier this year, and I also took my first steps into on the stage of performing in front of people, and been
Wow.
doing that for a few months.
I've read
Mm.
some of your poetry, what you posted in the group that we're in on Facebook together. I really like
Mhm.
it. I really enjoy it. It seems it's very reminiscent of some of the stuff I write about losing my faith in a lot of ways.
Uh, yeah, and uh, talking to CJ. and she said that it sounds like you're coming from a place of just we're based in a nutshell honorary towards the religion or your faith. And I'm like, well, it's not really that at all. It's just, again, I'm still trying to look for ways to explain it, because even explain to myself, other than I just see it as a source of entertainment. Hold on one sec.
Okay.
Hold on, my wife is calling me. And she know that I'm recording right now. Why she calling? All right. Yeah, it has nothing to do with me losing my faith. I've lost that like before my kids was born. you know, or at least before my second one was born.
Yeah.
And yeah, so but I now find it entertaining. It's a source of entertainment. Like I've been in this mindset of being creating my own source of entertainment, because I'm tired of looking at the same stuff over and over and over, just played by different characters. And it all just sound and looks the same to me. So I've been on this thing recently about imagination and how fascinating imagination is. Like, when you really think about it, imagination is like extremely fascinating, because it goes as deep to literally physically affecting you. Imagination, like, and I'm talking about not just affecting your body on how it makes you feel. Your mind will literally make you believe that you're looking at exactly what you're imagining.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, and then when I think about that some more, a friend of mine, my best friend actually, who do whatever talk with me, we was talking about religion, and he had said something that it went with the conversation. I didn't really think too much of it, because it sounded, I liked what he said, but then during the editing process, I thought about it some more. And he had said, like, a lot of people believe in God, Jesus because how it makes them feel when they pray and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, cool. Thought about it some more. And I was like, well, could it be the way that you feel is fueled by your imagination of what you were told about the religion? Like, because if you were never told about God, Jesus, or the Bible, could you imagine what you're praying to or who you're praying to? Yeah. So I thought about that. I just went in depth about that, and I was like, since religion is probably in the top 3 of taboo of never messing with to anybody in civilization. You can't talk about it. You can't even think about it unless you're in it. And if you're not in it, you're against it no matter what.
Yeah.
So I was like, Rebel Jesus birth.
I love
It's
it.
the birth of Rebel Jesus. And I when I in my poems, when I refer to God, I don't refer to him as God. I refer to him as dad or pops, or because I'm taking the persona of this Jesus character I created. So again, it's just a source of entertainment, because I find not religion itself intriguing, even though it is fascinating itself, but more so the people who I call blind followers is way more intriguing than the religion itself to me, because I'm like, how can you yourselves honestly say you believe in something, but you can't talk about what you're believing in?
Yeah.
You know?
It's actually kind of funny that you talked about your imagination and stuff, because in the Take Me to Church series, which is a a series that I'm writing that basically is about two gay kid boys in the South, who one is super religious and the other one's an atheist. So they get into a lot of theological discussions about religion and deconstructing faith. And one of the very first conversations they have, Harlan, who's one of the main characters, says to Luca, the other main character, that God is like an imaginary friend for adults. It's basically, this creation, whoever, because everyone sees God differently. They see physically differently, mentally differently, who he is, what he does. They cherry pick the Bible and what he's done in the past. So everyone differently. And it talks a lot about, he compares God to an imaginary friend, which Luca gets really offended by at first, but he was like, how is it different than an imaginary friend? You've never seen him. You created him. You decide what he says and what he believes and what he says to you. It's exactly the same as a child having an imaginary friend.
Which that child somewhat get chastised for having.
Yes.
Just like how adults believe other adults is chastising them when we just want to talk, or if they're like me, just converse about your imaginary friend that you call God and protects you and all this stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. They get into a lot of theological discussions in my book. But that was one of the very first ones. And Lucas says something along the lines of, I have faith, and Harlan responds with, faith isn't facts. Like, you can't use faith as a way to say that something is real. I could say I have faith.
Exactly.
Real, but adults don't believe in Santa. Like, plain and simple.
But faith actually negates it from being real anyway, because it defeats the purpose of the word faith if it was real. Right? At least that's how I think it, because faith means believing in the unseen.
Yeah.
So if I was to see God, then I no longer have faith that God exists. I know God exists, which is another issue, because how come you, out of all people, including the prophets, is the only one that's seen them?
I mean, if now if someone says, yeah, I saw God at Walmart, I saw him there, they're gonna like take them to an institution and be like,
exactly. And you know who else who is taking them to the institution? The people that actually believe in God. Don't believe the person that says they've seen God, but yet you believe Moses, a story of a person that supposedly kind of seen God. Which he didn't either, because once he found out that a piece of fire said that he was God, he was like, oh, this is God, I gotta turn away. So versus, let me see, is it somebody behind this freaking bush with a megaphone?
Well, I mean, the Bible is just an accumulation of stories that was written by men for men as a product of their time. Like, if someone said today, oh yeah, I'm pregnant, but I'm a virgin, you'd take them to the doctor and be like, okay, you're clearly not a virgin. Like, I just proved that you're not a virgin, but we didn't have science back then.
Which you don't have to be, you don't have to have sex to be pregnant.
It's much more realistic for a scared young girl. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm sorry. I'm just reading a message my wife.
It's much more realistic for a scared young girl to say, oh shit, I'm pregnant. What am I going to do? My husband will, or my future husband, my father, whoever, is going to stone me to death. I need to come up with some believable reason as to why I'm pregnant. And then like, okay, well, it was God. They can't prove that God didn't do it.
Exactly.
Angel, it's whatever. I'm scared. I'm going to stick with this story. and then, like, to me, that's way more believable than a virgin birth.
which they both sound like wow. Either way it go, it sounds wow, but people will more hearken to the God version more so than I just woke up pregnant.
Yeah, yeah. You can say, oh well, people didn't believe her. She was scrutinized, blah 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 blah. She didn't need people to believe her. She only needed Joseph to believe her.
Mm-hmm.
The one that would kill her if he found out that she had premarital sex with someone else, and he was gullible. I mean, like, what are you gonna say to that?
And yeah, and which kind of brings me to the which I am so glad that I finally have a female on the show to talk about this, because out of all blind followers I've spoken to, and yeah, I'm not saying it to be derogatory, but that's how people are going to take it as derogatory, because we got names for everybody, right? We call them Christians. Why can't Christian be a derogatory name for a believer? You
Yes.
know, or why can't believer be a derogatory word for a Christian? You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? But I say blind follower, you get offended because you doing exactly what your religion tells you to do, is to blindly follow, which I understand why you're a blind follower, because your religion tells you to blindly follow. So you're doing that correctly. So can you
Mhm.
do the rest of your religion correctly if you're going to be a part of this thing? Don't just do what you said earlier, cherry pick, and then say,
Yeah.
yeah, I believe because this portion says that.
Yes.
But forget about the other portion, because the other portion said I'm a blind follower and not a Christian. You know what
Forget
I'm
about this whole portion that says I should not mix fabrics. Forget about that. Let's just
saying?
the gays.
Yeah. So you speak on the whole being stoned for being pregnant, uh, without having sex or whatever. And out of all the blind followers that I've spoken to, I find it even more fascinating that females, period, believe in religion, in Christianity, when the religion does not care about females. Females are not respected at all in the Bible. None of them. And that's including
So,
Mary.
no. Here's a little background info about me. I am from a conservative Christian household. I wasn't allowed to cut my hair growing up. My parents believed that women should have hair long enough to dry their husband's feet with. So, because there's one passage in the Bible where Mary dries Jesus's feet with her hair.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in a very religious household, and I grew up with the kind of family dynamic where my mom would get a paycheck, hand it directly to my dad, and then ask for $20 from that paycheck to go and buy us necessities. So it was a very sexist environment, and I started questioning that very early. I am the kind of person who has always questioned things. I am definitely a feminist. And I was just like, why are you giving him your paycheck and then asking for money from your paycheck? Like, that's your paycheck. And my mom was like, well, he's the man of the household. He's got you got to listen to your husband. You got to listen to the man of the household. And that just did not compute with me. Like, even today, I'm married to a man, and like I cut my hair a few years ago into I had a mohawk. And I didn't tell my mom because that's just our thing we do. And I
Did
saw,
you get permission from your husband to do that?
yeah, and she yelled and she was like, Michael, that's my husband's name. She was like, Michael, why'd you let her do that? Like, you don't let her do anything. You should know your daughter. She just does what she wants and then tells me about it. But my mom, it's just there's such an indoctrination. Like, I have two other sisters, they're both older than me. And they're a lot like her. They believe, women should serve the men. They go to church. They're very religious. They're very devout. And it's just, you literally, it's so hard to explain, but you're brainwashed from the moment she gives birth that you're less than a man. Your faith is more important than anything, God, it goes God, your husband, and then you. Like there is a hierarchy and you are at the bottom and you need to be okay with that because that is the place that God assigned to you.
Exactly.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, so it's just really interesting about the women in the church and the dynamic in that. But some, females would argue that Mary Magdalene was an apostle. And while she probably was, that's not what the church teaches. And it doesn't was. It matters what's in the Bible and what the church teaches, because that is what people shove down your fucking throat. So until the church starts teaching that Mary Magdalene was an apostle and had a bigger role in Jesus's life than what the Bible that was written by man says, then I don't care.
Yeah, and that's another thing I keep forgetting to add, or I believe I mentioned it a few times, but it keeps getting overlooked. This whole challenge our beliefs thing that I've created to have conversation about religion, in particular Christianity, but our religion, whoever want to come to board and talk about it, who have the courage to talk about their own religion and to question their own religion. I'm strictly, like, my main thing is going off what the Bible says, because we're not really going off what society says first. We're going off what the Bible says, and then mixing in the bits and pieces that society decided to want to pick and choose in with what the Bible says. And that's what and it's kind of like, this is the book that's like running things, not what you believe in per se, but this book, you're taking what you believe in and then reading this book to try to confirm that what you're saying, or what you're doing, is it okay? Which the book, if it's evil, then the book gonna say it's okay. For the most part.
Well, it goes even further than that, because the Bible itself was the books within the Bible were chosen by the Catholic Church hundreds of years ago. They decided which books went into the Bible and which books were less than pleasurable. Like the Book of Thomas, for example, it was found with the Dead Sea Scrolls, so that should make it pretty, appropriate for the Bible, since everything else in the Dead Sea Scrolls went into the Bible. But the Catholic Church was like, oh, this is less than desirable content, so we're not going to, and we're just going to say it doesn't go with it or whatever. So
we're going to say Thomas was there.
Yeah, and then, like, for example, the Ethiopian church, the church in Ethiopia, have a different version of the Bible, because they have the Book of Enoch in theirs, and that in our version of the Bible. So it's pretty interesting. Like, not only do Christians pick and choose what part of the Bible they want to believe and follow, the Catholic Church picked and chose what books they wanted to put in the Bible for the Christians to follow.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mainly talk about too. Not just Christianity, but the branches of Christianity, which is Catholic and Baptist and all of them. Like, all of them are Christians as well, but they did exactly what you just described. Well, I'm not going to go with that one because that would make me a Christian, and I don't believe in what Christians say, so I'm going to go with this, and now I'm a Catholic.
Well, it's interesting because Catholicism was like, Roman Catholic was probably the birth of Christianity. But when I was growing up, I grew up Southern Baptist, I think, and a very weird sect of Southern Baptist. And that's the thing, like, one sect is different from another, and they're the same. Like, they should all be the same. But I remember this guy that, like, lived near us started going to a Catholic church. And my mom was like, oh, he's Catholic. I was like, okay, I didn't know what that meant. And she was like, I was like, well, isn't that Christian? Don't they believe in God? And she was like, yeah, but it's a different kind of, she's like, they don't really believe in God. She was like, that he doesn't really believe in God. He believes in blah, blah, blah. I was like, and as I got older, and then when I started studying religion, I was like, she's fucking crazy. Like it is literally Christian, like Catholic is literally the birth of Christianity. But Martin Luther nailed his 99 grievances on the door on October 31st, like 18 something or 17 something, which created Lutheranism, which is where all of these, like baptism, Episcopalian, all of those branched off into. So then you have Catholics versus Protestants.
Mm-hmm. And
And
they
let's not talk about
all
Anglo-Saxons.
and they all Christians and believe in the same God, except they just go
Yeah,
by a different name.
exactly. They believe in the same God, but they like even the churches. So like I'm from a very rural area, and my aunts and uncles, some of them went to a different church, and my mom. And we used to go visit some other churches. And one time I asked my mom, I was like, why don't we go to my cousin's church? And she was like, oh no, they don't believe the same way we do. And I was like, the church is called Church of Christ. Like, don't we believe in Christ? And my mom was like, yeah, but they believe differently. And I was like, I just didn't understand. Like as a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old, I was just like, none of this makes any sense. Like,
and
what
you
do you mean?
and it's so funny that Christians or blind followers don't even have an argument for their own argument.
No,
They
they
just
don't.
they don't have anything to say other than what your mom just told you. It's like, oh, never mind that. Pretty
That's just the
much.
way it is. Like
Yeah,
that's literally
exactly.
that's what I
That,
always heard. That's just the way it is. It's just the way we believe. That's just, how it is. That's what the preacher says. And there isn't
and
any like basis of facts and logic.
exactly, and that's why I changed the name to challenge our beliefs, because your beliefs is just as flawed as mine, but you murderously don't believe that.
No.
Like murderously don't believe that. Like you would actually murder me for not believing the way that you believe.
Oh yeah.
And it's again, again, I get it, because your religion actually tell you to do that. It's okay to do that. Your religion is cool, but you're not going to question that.
But then they turn around and they say that they're a religion of peace.
Exactly. You saying your God is loving, merciful, and caring, which is all titles that humans gave him. None of that is in the Bible. God himself didn't say he was these things. In fact, he said one thing that I can recall, and that's I'm jealous.
I'm a
I, I,
jealous God.
I'm
Yeah.
a jealous guy. He said that's the only thing that he titled himself that I can think of. Everything else is given to him by man. Like, I don't even hear it in the Bible pretty much too often that, oh, he's loving, caring, merciful, and all this and this and that. Yeah, I just hear it more so outside of the Bible. But I want to just go back to the females a little bit, just because again, why I have one. There's no telling when I'm gonna get somebody, let alone a female, get somebody with courage to talk. And I would like to get somebody like some actual believers. I had one who was happened to be a pastor, he says, but I'm hitting them with stuff. It's in Challenge Our Beliefs. Just scroll down a lot, you'll find the
Yeah.
video. But yeah, I'm hitting them with stuff that's directly from the Bible, and he's like, well, let me go back and let me see what this is.
I have
I'm
to look
like,
that up. Yeah.
oh my goodness, but you're a freaking pastor though, man. Like, yeah, I'm not saying you don't really have to go back and check for real. You probably do, but I'm just saying, like, if you're a pastor, a lot of what I'm saying should stick out, and you should be able to pinpoint it what I'm talking about. And he couldn't do it, and it got a little heated. And I try not to go that far. And I did apologize. I believe I typed it in the chat that afterwards. I'm this one got a little heated. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I'm going back to the females in the Bible, how, and going back to what you're saying about your mom and how they just straight up, it's a man's world to them.
Mhm.
And it's passages where they can't, you know how you said it's God, your husband, and maybe you after that.
Yeah. Well, it's usually your
And,
kids, especially your male kids. And then,
especially if you got a female kid. Oh, but
yeah.
how they can't even pray to God. They can't put God first unless it goes through the husband first. And
Hmm.
this passage is where if your husband do find out that you have prayed to God without his knowledge, somehow he has the anointings to strip that prayer away until you get permission from him to pray to God. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. And you call yourself you willingly believe in this? You
Yeah.
willingly choose to believe in this?
They're so scared of this made up place that is, eternal fires of damnation or whatever. They're so fucking scared of that. They'll do whatever they can to, and that includes like hating themselves. Like you're taught, like my dad always said that he wished he had a boy, and that
Mm.
he would have treated I would have been treated differently if I had been a boy. And
You
that,
would have though. You would
yeah, I
have.
would have. I
You would have.
100% would have. But as a little girl, that like fucks with you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
It would mess, it should mess with you if you just little period, just a little person period.
yes,
Your
yes,
parent telling you that, like it may be true. Let's just take religion out of it right quick. That could be true. I wish you were a boy, but you that much of an a-hole to actually tell your kid that?
yeah, yeah. And he never, and that's the thing, like, he didn't think anything was wrong with saying that. Like, he was just like, oh, I wish I would have had a boy, or I wish you were a boy, or especially me. I was the youngest. So, like, I was like their last chance at a boy, and ooh, another disappointment. And I, I,
Oh,
I was treated a little bit like a boy with like activities around the house. Like we used to load coal and wood and all kinds of stuff like that. But at the same time, as I got older, my parents were incredibly strict. I wasn't allowed to go to like school dances. I wasn't allowed to do any school activities, nothing like that. But my dad once said that if you were a boy, then I would have let you.
mm.
And and like it all comes down to the fact that women can get pregnant and men can pretend that they don't have a role in that.
Oh, and that's all you are in religion.
Yeah.
And I do say religion broadly. I don't know about all the religion, but I don't believe in any of them.
No.
I just find them all entertaining, amusing to me, entertaining. But yes, you say that you're brought up that way, and that's exactly how I feel. Women and men are programmed to be women and men
Yeah.
within society. Like you're not programmed to be yourself. You women, and especially, you're programmed to be someone's wife or baby mama.
Yeah.
You're
Your
literally
whole life.
programmed to be that from birth, which is why you got dang on 3, 5-year-olds playing house the way they play house,
Yeah.
because they're programmed to be girls versus being yourself.
My whole life I was told, like you have to learn to be a good wife. You have to do what your husband says, be a good wife to him, blah, 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 wait on him hand and foot, like that type of thing. And like you're literally taught that. Like in religion, women are incubators and used as a
Or
means,
prostitutes.
yeah, and used as a means to create more followers.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yep.
why the Catholic Church
With
said,
prostitution.
yeah,
With prostitution.
yeah, and like they're either good upstanding, um, they're either good upstanding wives or they're whores. Like there's no in
One or the other.
between. Like
Also,
and
it seems like all the women are freaking barren unless it's time for them to be pregnant. in the Bible. Like no women can have birth. Like they can't even have they don't even have the means within their body to become pregnant, unless unless it's time for them to be, unless the book says, okay, God gonna come down and put this, make it okay for you to be pregnant, and then it's okay. If not, if you're not that, then you're a whore. It's one or the other. It's one or the other.
Yeah. But men can fuck around with whoever they want before marriage because there's no way to prove that they did or didn't.
Even in marriage, only men, only women commit adultery. That's it. Adultery is only meant for women. Even today, even in today's world, right now, for the most part. Like, only time men really get in trouble for adultery per se is when he is like personal. Like, if me and you were together, you catch me, and it's a personal issue now, and now I commit adultery. But through society, I'm just being a man.
Yeah. Well, now we have like things like DNA tests, which prove that he cheated on his wife with this other girl and got her pregnant. But at the same time, again, like it's just you being a man. You're dude, what dudes do. You stick your dick
exactly.
And
BS coming from a man is straight BS.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be that way. It's not fair to men to have that stigma on them because not all men are that way. But women, if as soon as like you sleep, you're not, the further your number goes up, the more you're a whore. But men, same number, the same body or whatever they call it. And it's just this double standard, and it exists because of religion.
100%. Far as I can go back through all my research, that's what it stems from. Religion. This adultery thing that only affects women, it stems from religion, as far as I can go back.
Specifically Christianity, because a lot of the ancient religions loved sex. They had same-sex relationships. Women was in control of their sexuality and things of that nature. It wasn't until Christianity took root, and then of course the Middle Ages and the medieval times, that's when shit really started to hit the fan, and it just like stalled our progress as humans. And that comes down to religion.
And I think it comes from, which just sounds strange. It sounds funny too, because I want to touch on this too. How I want to say like the first 4 to 6 books of the New Testament are the exact same thing, but tweaked out just slightly if you pay attention to it.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all tell the same story about Jesus.
And it's tweaked out just slightly because I get the notion of you can get enough people to tell similar stories that it gotta be true, right?
Well, each time Judas becomes like more and more evil, he becomes more of the villain in each one. And it's clearly the Catholic Church and man reading the first one and then being like, okay, we need to make this worse. And so forth and so on. But yeah, like in the 5 main books of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it's kind of interesting of some of the changes. Like one of them will say that like 2 women found Jesus, and another one would say that it was Mary, and then another one will say that the townspeople found him or something like that. There are just so many inconsistencies in just those 5 books alone, which are supposed to be tales of the same event.
Y'all all hung with this cat, right? Didn't y'all hang with him? Y'all all was hanging around Jesus all the time, right? So how do y'all tell him something different?
I think it's normal for perspectives to have a different take on things. Like that's a very normal thing. That's why eyewitness testimonies aren't considered, like even in law, eyewitness testimonies aren't considered something that is valid in a lot of ways, because the way that your mind works, you forget stuff, but you're basing your entire fucking religion your philosophy, the way you live your life on eyewitness testimonies from hundreds of years ago that aren't valid. But
Yeah.
you're telling me that like I am a horrible person, I'm going to hell because of eyewitness testimonies hundreds of years ago that were written and passed down in different languages. Like we were talking, there's so many ways for this to go wrong and has gone wrong. The translation is wrong now. The context of which you read something is wrong now. Like it's just like one word now versus 50 years ago even is a different word. Like the word fag, for example, used to mean cigarettes.
Still does.
For homosexuals. So
Still does.
yeah, it still does in like other
Uh-huh.
in other countries and stuff. So it's really interesting of how like they just are like, oh yeah, this is what's written. We have to abide by it. But they just don't take into consideration all of these factors. Like Harry Potter was written, but you don't see me going and worshiping Hermione Granger as lovely as she is. Like,
Which, since you bring that up, which you should have all the right to, which because um it's a religion to some folks.
I mean,
Like
have
my
you?
auntie, my auntie used to say a lot about what your parent, your mom. You told me about your mom was saying about Catholics, although they just do it differently. My auntie used to say that I used to be a Mormon. Well, I used to be a Mormon, roll with them. I ain't never had the suit and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
I went with them. And my auntie used to tell me that yeah, you know that's a cult, right? We
It's all a
you know
cult.
that's a cult, but I'm like, every single religion is a cult. In
Yeah.
fact, if I could bring you, me, them, and just say we all believe in Dragon Ball Z, that's now a cult.
Yeah.
But people
A
don't want
cult
to.
just depends on how many followers you have.
Exactly. So every single religion is a cult. Also, every single religion is a mythology. But
Mhm.
yet we call Greek, Roman, Celtics, Norse, all of them are mythologies, even though you just go back to the roots of your religion, you have talking animals too.
Yeah, it's so
You
interesting
have
because people are like, oh yeah, a virgin birth is totally believable. An angel coming down, yeah, that's totally can happen. But the moment that you mention another creation story for a God that they don't believe in, they're like, oh, that's absurd. Whoever heard of getting pregnant by a magic flower? And I'm like, it's literally the same thing.
yeah,
Like,
even though, yeah.
in fact, the
I'm sorry.
mythology in the Bible is just borrowed from other religions.
Oh my, because
Jesus ain't
Christianity,
special.
the Bible, going off from the King James version, it sounds straight like a lot of Greek mythology.
Oh yeah.
We got
Jesus
the
isn't the first person to be resurrected. Horus was. Another Egyptian god was. I think it's Osiris.
what
Like
about Adam? You don't hear the talks about it, but one can like put two and two together and theorize that. You mean to tell me Adam and Eve or wasn't resurrected at least once or twice? Because yeah, they knew how to survive out there by themselves. You know what I'm saying?
right.
I'm quite sure that something ate them or something bit them, which got them, poison, or they didn't know what a cliff was and decided to fall off of it by accident.
Well,
You know,
Adam and Eve had two sons, Cain and Abel. Who the fuck did they breed with?
their mom, they
I
was borking their
guess
mom. That's they was
that's the
borking their
only
mom.
way. That's the
They,
only like explanation, other than maybe God creating some other random ass people, or there's the whole the belief in Lilith being Adam's wife.
oh my goodness. That's why I go off what the Bible says versus what other people want to make up. But I like to reference other stuff, like to say, like, well, hey, yeah, like the Ethiopian Bible, like you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, yeah, they have pretty much the same books that we have, but more. And I get why
Yeah,
Enoch
I
is
mean, they added the
in
Book of Enoch, which is a piece of apocalyptic literature about a man named Enoch going through like basically a vision of the apocalypse. I think is what it is. I read it at one point in college because I had a class on apocalyptic literature. It's pretty interesting. But there's also things like I said, I mentioned the Book of Thomas, and that one's like less than favorable because it like well, there's the infancy of Thomas in the Book of Thomas, and one depicts Jesus. They both depict Jesus at different stages of life. One of them claims that Jesus had a brother or a sister, which is definitely plausible given that Mary was young, Joseph was young, and birth
let's
control.
just go.
Like,
Let's just go with duh.
yeah, and then but at one point Jesus I think he like to prove that he's this magical being, he kills somebody, and then the whole people in the town who saw it like freaks out, and then he makes
Uh,
a bond as a way to like that's the situation. Like I
oh,
don't think a kid would do. but, but
I've
it depicts,
heard. Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. So I'm
No,
sorry.
it
Finish.
just depicts Jesus in like a less than favorable light. So
Oh man,
like yeah, we don't want that book in there. It's fine.
that's hilarious. That sounds something like what the government would do.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like to me, it's a definite kid way of reacting to something like, oh, I killed somebody. And let me make these kids go blind while I resurrect him, you know?
I, I have heard of that story before, which of course is not in the Americanized
No,
Bible,
it's not in any
but
Bible.
yeah, but I have heard of that story before. And what I got from the Book of Enoch is I didn't read. I only got through one, but I haven't read
Mhm.
the other three. It's four of them, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't got read the other three yet, but the first one that I have read, I got that Enoch pretty much dines out God. Like he tells on them. He like I get that it was another civilization before Adam and Eve.
Mm-hmm.
I get that this so-called all-knowing God is not all-knowing. Because if he did, he would have stopped the so-called angels for doing what they did. Because they made a pact in secret to do what they did in the Book of Enoch. Um, and then mankind also gets punished unjustly, just like I feel like Adam and Eve got punished unjustly, and they have no idea that what they're about to get into was a sin.
Yeah.
But God does his loving and merciful thing that he always does and take it out on us anyway.
I mean, he killed everybody according to the story of Noah's Ark, which
Yeah,
there's no archaeological evidence that that ever happened. There's no geological evidence that that ever happened.
nothing,
Whatever. I'm
nothing,
not going to talk
nothing,
about that.
nothing in the Bible that I have can is tangible. I have yet to hear or read about anything tangible from the Bible, Old
No, there's
Testament or New Testament. The only thing that I can say is way more plausible, and it is in the Bible, is aliens exist.
yeah.
It is in the Bible. In fact, it describes your God as being one of those aliens because the alien told your one of the prophet that I am your Lord. And
Yeah. I mean,
he describes what he looked like.
the Bible definitely talks about other gods as well.
Oh
Uh,
my goodness. Yes, I was going to get on that.
it constantly references other gods. So
Which is why he says, I'm the one that you should be praying
yeah,
to,
like
no
even the
other
Ten
one.
Commandments, like that's something I actually have a discussion in one of my books about the Ten Commandments and about how how one you're making these 10 moral codes, but you don't include genocide, rape, slavery. Like you literally just it's literally just like obey your parents. Like, okay.
Mm.
Like,
And
don't commit adultery.
if you don't obey your parents, like you do have the right to have your kids stoned to death.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
God set that in
Or,
motion.
selling your daughter to slavery, that's
Oh,
perfectly okay. but heaven forbid you use God's names in vain or whatever else it's in there. Like the Ten Commandments crack me up. Like,
I was gonna send you my two latest poems because they
mhm.
talk about a lot. I talk about what you just said, your virgin daughters,
Yeah.
which that that Dago cat lot. Oh my
I've
goodness.
um I've started a series of poems that are written from the perspective of biblical stories, but making
Mm-hmm.
God the kind of the evil person. So one of them is Jonah in the whale, and it talks about how Jonah wasn't even drowning and he didn't need to be saved, but now God has captured him into this beast's belly, and now he has to ask God to save him from something that God put him in, which is all very true.
It's
I
all
wrote,
in the
yeah,
Bible,
yeah,
all throughout the Bible.
I have a poem about that in specific because I found that, and like I have another one called The Ark, which is a
Mm-hmm.
Noah's Ark. But I'm starting this series of poetry that's basically biblical stories told from the perspective of people who are like, why did you do this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. like,
But again, here you are willingly believing in this
yeah.
and then get mad when questions arise.
Oh yeah. I have a vivid memory of when I was little, I asked my mom about what was bigger, Noah's Ark or the Titanic, because I had just watched Titanic in my fifth grade, whatever class. And my mom was like, "Oh, I'm not sure. Why don't we ask, the preacher?" And I go up to him and I was like, "What was bigger, the Titanic or Noah's Ark?" And he's like, he goes to the Bible and like reads a passage, and he's like, "Well, the Noah's Ark was said to be like 100, whatever. It's like the size of a football field." And I was like, "So the Titanic was bigger?" And he said,
Uh-huh.
"Well, how did God get all of these animals
We know why. We know
that
why.
is
He's
smaller
God.
than
That's why.
Titanic?" Well, and yeah, and his answer was basically anything can happen through God. You just have to. And I just, even as a, how old would I would have been, like 8? As an 8-year-old, I was like, that is an acceptable answer. I need evidence. I need facts. Like,
And again, I get a lot of the reason of why blind followers act the way they act because again, if you're choosing to believe in this religion, then I get it. Your religion tells you to do everything the way that you're acting right now. Your religion tells you to act like that and be that way. Again, I get it, but I don't get this is the fascinating part about it is that you wouldn't like this done to you, but you blindly follow this because you believe because you're fearful of death.
yeah, you're not taught critical
Yeah.
thinking skills. And religion becomes a safety blanket for a lot of people because they're so scared of death and what goes beyond.
Imagination.
They use it as an excuse, like, oh,
Imagination.
this little kid, yeah, imagination. This my niece who's 8 years old died of cancer. God just wanted an angel early. I'll meet him. And like
My goodness.
it helps them through the process, I think, in a lot of ways. Like my dad died a few years ago, and my sister and mom are still like very, they haven't gotten past it. And I think a part of that is because of religion, because they're like, oh, we'll see him again someday in heaven. And it just, and me, I'm just sitting here like he's dead, he's gone. Like I love my dad. I do feel bad for people who die, but they're gone. Like what am I? Why would I dwell
Yeah,
on?
and I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm
No, go
sorry.
ahead. Just why would I dwell on someone that is gone? Like it just doesn't make any. It's just illogical to me. And you're not taught critical thinking skills, though.
Yeah, and again, yeah, I feel that I don't want anybody to die, and I feel that you feel a whole lot worse than what you're leading up to be because nobody who claims to be this believer that they say they are believes wholeheartedly. Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my opinion, uh, it sounds mocking, but it's a real legit question for you to so-called, because as being a believer, part of your duties to being a believer is to get other followers, right?
Mm-hmm.
which that's not what I'm trying to do here. Doing this, recently I had put up a post about eating eating medium rare meat or blood is a sin, which biblical times it is a sin. But then
Mm-hmm.
they go to people say, oh well, that's not blood that you're eating, and it's something else, and blah blah blah, and do your research and blah blah. Cool, okay, fine, that could be true, but you're still not questioning me. You're still talking at me versus I just stated so many times that okay, that probably is the process now. But then you think they knew how to freaking slaughter meat the way they knew how to slaughter meat then? That's with
Yeah.
if that be the case, why would it need to be a warning not to eat blood? Why would it be a warning don't ingest battery acid on here? Because somebody, one of you freaking rereads, is going around licking battery acid.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
The thing of like, so to me, there's a way more logical explanation as to why that role is in the Bible. And that is because back in the day, they didn't know how to cook meat properly. And like they didn't realize that you could eat certain meats raw, but other meats you couldn't eat raw. So they just said, let's make them all be cooked properly. And it's a sin not to cook them properly because we want you guys to keep living and keep having babies to spread the word.
Exactly.
That
But
makes way more sense to me than, oh, this is a sin, so we got to keep saying it's a sin. Like, like
it, yeah, it was at that moment I found out that people don't understand the difference between debating and conversation.
yeah,
Like I'm not trying to argue with anyone, or nor am I trying to convert anyone or get anyone to change their mind about something. I'm if anybody trying to get their mind changed is I, because I'm the one that has the questions about why you blindly follow this and you can't tell me anything other than belittle somebody, which is me, into try to making them think that since you don't believe, you're the ingrate.
yeah, and less than them, yeah,
Yeah, so I found out. I found out then. That's when, like I said, just said, and then uh, I put a lot of posts out in that manner, but again, the first thing that humanity goes to is to be mad first, and
mm-hmm.
then make their comment. Versus, well, why do you think that? You know what I'm saying? Versus
Yeah,
sparking the conversation about what it is that I just posted up. You just, hey, that's stupid. You're stupid for saying that because here's the information about how meat is slaughtered and that's not blood. Well, again, you
when
really
you
think
didn't
they
even
had that
question
technology back
it.
then? Yeah,
Yeah,
you really think that technology was made back then? And
yeah,
according to I could probably maybe think why you would probably think that, but I don't think you can think like that. But according to science, wasn't the pyramids built before religion? I, but
depending on
so
whose religion they were.
but yeah,
Christianity.
but I'm just
Yeah,
saying like they had the technology to do that. So maybe they were smart enough to know how to slaughter meat, but it's
that's true.
nowhere written back then that they knew how to slaughter meat. They just was going around being bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Well, I mean,
for you to
this is from the religion that thinks that they like symbolically drink the blood of Christ every week. So,
and and one of those, like you said, in one of those books in the Old Testament, the blood it actually turns into blood. It
yeah,
actually turns into flesh. And
yeah,
going back to Judas, Judas was a-okay until he touched the bread that Jesus said, hey, the one I pass this to, that's who is going to be the one who do it. It was
but
then where the book said that's when this devil jumped into Judas. Like,
but
so
the
you
thing
mean to
about
tell
Judas
me?
is he was necessary. If he didn't do what he did, then Christianity wouldn't fucking exist. Then God did.
I mean, I get that, but at the same time, it's like, so if this book says what I just explained, So that means to tell me that that's just God again tampering with someone's free will, because it's giving it's implying that Judas didn't even have intentions on doing what he said he was going to know, what Jesus said he was going to do, until you pass him the bread, and that's when the devil supposedly jumped inside him.
Well, Judas has his own book, actually, that again wasn't made into the canonical text of the Bible. I don't know it. But it basically depicts Judas as Jesus's most loyal follower. And they actually have a conversation in it. Him and Jesus actually have a conversation in it where Jesus tells him to give him up to the Romans because it needs to happen, or in order for everyone's sin to be forgiven and for him to die for everyone's sin. These events have to happen. So making Judas this evil, horrible devil bad guy is ridiculous, because if it wasn't for Judas starting the events that led to Jesus' crucifixion, none of this would be happening. You wouldn't.
And that's also stating that this so-called will that y'all following of God, that since nobody knows what God's plan is, but you know his will, though, that don't make no sense to me. No. But because that will and plan isn't that the same thing?
Free will and God's cannot coincide. They cannot. You can't both believe that God has a plan and that humans have free will. There's no way.
No. I know. What I'm saying is you're following God's will, but you don't know God's plan.
Yeah.
How can that be? Like if you're following his will, then you know his plan then.
Yeah.
Because that's what a will is. When we write a will to leave for our loved ones, that's our plan to leave for our loved ones. So when you say things like that, again, you don't have an argument for your own argument. So you just say anything that you're literally like a kid. The first thing that comes to your mind, you spat it out without no thought about it.
Yeah, and you're just repeating stuff that people have already said to you. So
over and over and over.
All you hear growing up is like, "Oh, God has a plan. It's okay. Everything's gonna work out. It was God's plan that this happened to you. That you grew up without indoor plumbing. That was God's plan." But the moment that you say, "Well, was it God's plan for this
for women to be women?"
Yeah. Or was it God's plan for women, for her to get pregnant at 16? And they're like, no, that was her free will. She was responsible for that. She shouldn't have opened her legs. Like, pick one.
So if it's God, and then that all goes down to the question that not only non-believers have, but the question that also believers have too, is that, okay, I'm flying, God's will is to take me. Why y'all coming with me?
Yeah. And then it comes down to, if it's God's plan, then the fact of the matter is he is creating humans just to be tortured in hell, because it was his plan all along for you to go to hell. So it just comes down to this huge issue between free will and God's plan, because you can't have both. But the church and people who are religious will use both as an arguing mechanism. But have both. It's either God has a plan and is damning people from the moment they're born, and there's nothing they can do to change that, or you have free will and God isn't all knowing, nor does he care about the people that end up being damned. Because all it would take is for God to be like, "Hey, bro, don't do that." And then someone, okay, told me not to. He literally just told me. I mean, it wouldn't take very much for him to, save these people, these creations that he supposedly loves. And
especially the true believers, especially the ones that believe wholeheartedly. You got protection.
It wouldn't make any sense for him to, for you to have to decipher these stupid little clues from an ancient book, and that's the decision whether or not you're going to heaven or hell. It feels very juvenile to me. It feels like you're playing a game with a toddler and there's no winner.
He is. He's a freaking, God is immature.
Oh,
as we like to say. God is freakishly immature. And this whole thing, like, am I the only one that said, like, that read that basically Jesus is reciting parables on purposely, like
Mhm.
he's purposely deceiving you.
Yeah.
And that's what he told, and that's what Jesus himself said in the book. But again, it's kind of like this is what I do, because this has been brought up too a few times. And you said it too, how the translation, because I find it funny that you can speak this language fluently, but you can't read it fluently to translate
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
You know, but so when that's what I do when I read the Bible, and I suggest that to other folks too, since we've been going about it this whole time up until the time I just realized is that when you read the Bible, people try to translate what they read versus just reading it. It's already translated for you. Why are
Mhm.
you trying to translate something that's already translated and you don't know how to translate nothing?
Yeah.
So you're trying to translate something that somebody else has already translated for you for your understanding. And by you translating, to me, that tells me you're questioning your own faith because you're choosing not to believe what you read word for word. You would rather read it, take out a couple of words that you read, and or add other words that wasn't even
Yeah.
there of what you read. And now that's a translation that you got from what he meant was like, how can you know what anybody means from text, which is why we get so confused or start arguments when people start testing back and forward.
Well, you're basically these people are basing their lives, their children's lives, the fate of others in how they interpret a book. That authors can't come on and say, "Yeah, I meant it this way." Like the authors are dead, they're gone, they never existed. Like they're basing the world, the laws, their lives, their families, their wives, like they're basing all of these things on the way they or their preacher interpreted a book that was written hundreds of years ago. And it makes zero sense. Like
Well, not only written hundreds of years ago, but been revised multiple times
revised, yeah.
within those 100 years ago, which
It
is my perspective of a revival or a revised
yeah.
version is
Yeah.
basically exactly what you said. Oh, what Jesus really said was
Well,
blah
I
blah
mean,
blah.
some of the ancient texts were written in Hebrew, some of them were in Latin, some of them were in languages that we don't even use anymore. And so these texts have been like passed down and rewritten and rewritten and rewritten and translated from this language to this language to this language to this language. And then not only that, you then now you're basing, and it's all interpretation. So it's like, hey, like I had a friend of mine that I was talking to about the Ten Commandments, and we were talking about the thou shalt not put no God before me. And I was like, well, that is saying that other gods exist. And she was like, oh no, I interpret that as other things people worship, like money. And I was like, well, it's great that you interpret it that way, but others interpret it this way. So why does one or two people get to decide how we read this and how we interpret this when everyone's interpreting it differently, and people are basing their entire moral code off of this thing that they interpreted one way? This makes no sense.
Exactly, yes. And this is kind of running kind of long. I
Yes.
am at work.
Yeah.
but it is something else I wanted to I wanted to mention some more about imagination, because I'm just really fascinated with that right now. But oh, it was something I was talking to somebody today about sin. Like,
Mm-hmm.
uh, what is it really? Like, what exactly is a blessing and what exactly is a sin? As far, but touching on the sin is, again, this is all stemming from mainly the North American King James version of the Bible, because
Yeah.
for what I get from what I get from the world is that is the religion that's running the planet for the most part.
For the most part.
Yeah. So that being said, I also go on thinking about how Adam and Eve are nowhere near as significant as they should be, being the first two humans to populate the planet. Because the only thing we know about them is they got in trouble, kicked out, had a couple of kids.
Yeah.
They should be way more significant than that, in my opinion. So it had me thinking about what exactly is a sin, because I don't think that Adam and Eve were the first two humans. I just think they were the start of another project or the next project in his mind or whatever. So it's like, so what exactly is a sin, and how does God know that this is a sin before it's committed? He would have to experience it first to realize he don't like this. That's right?
A concept, yeah.
So how did he know to come up with this stuff to tell Adam and Eve what not to do if he had yet to experience what he don't like done?
Yeah. I mean, you're just giving my that point.
So that's what made me think even more about, I don't think that Adam and Eve were the first two humans. Like they were just the jumpstart of another experiment.
I mean, I think it's all just stories. So
of course, I believe it's all just stories too. But again, like I said, I'm entertaining myself.
But if you were to believe it, how would you? What would happen in a way for you to believe this actually happened? Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're justifying, if you had to believe this is the only way I would believe it.
Exactly. You know what? You explain it to me more than I can explain it to myself to other people, because that's exactly it. Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like if again, I believe it enough to make fun of it and to entertain myself with it, but I don't believe it on the aspect of, if I die, I'm going to hell. Because if I was to believe this, like how blind followers believe in it, the way hell is not even created yet.
Yeah.
Also, if I die, if I could be the most baddest, meanest dude on the planet, I still have a chance to get in God's grace after death, because that's where Jesus supposedly had went in those, at least one of those 3 days he was gone after he died, to the spirit world, to talk to the spirit, to convert them again. So this whole thing about everybody, actually, in my opinion, you're actually condemning yourself within your own religion, condemning other people to hell, because again, it's not even created yet, and that's not what you should be doing.
The way you convince people, you say, I mean, it comes down to like, people have asked me, they're like, oh, well, you don't believe in God, so why do you like joke about hell so often? Like, I always say, oh, I'm going to hell for this. And the answer is simple. Like, you don't believe that Freddy Krueger exists. Like, you the story, but it still doesn't stop you from thinking, oh, he's going to come into my nightmare. Like,
oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah. It doesn't exist. Like, Santa doesn't exist, but you still write from Santa on your kid's present.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
It's literally the same concept. And she was like, oh, you just explained it so well. I never even thought about it like that. I was like, it's the boogeyman. It's the things that logically aren't real, like a story that you watch on TV, but I still like Lilo and Stitch aren't real, but I still reference Stitch. I still reference Baby Yoda in my regular life, but I know they're not real.
Exactly.
We do as humans. And she was like, oh, I never even thought about it that way. It just kind of goes goes back to that, like this creating things for yourself.
Exactly. I feel like if you believe in God, you should absolutely believe in anything else. Anything else. If you believe in God, why don't you believe in aliens? Because the Bible gives way more evidence that aliens exist, more so than it does God or Jesus exists. Or existed. If you believe in God, why don't you believe in the Loch Ness monster, the Bigfoot,
I
and
mean, I have more
all
belief
that.
in Bigfoot than I do in God, to be honest. There's more
But
evidence.
but I'm but you want to know why? Because Bigfoot leaves more evidence
Yeah.
in the real world that he
Yeah.
probably does exist, more so than God left anything.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I had came across this passage, not a passage, this article about, again, this is like the epitome of what it means to be a blind follower, blindly following something, and without question, is that this article said we have we have Jesus's foreskin. I'm like, okay, let's just say this is
Why would you
true.
want that?
Yeah, I'm just about to say this. Let's just I like to hit people with their own words in when it comes to conversation. Is that okay? Let's go with it. You do have Jesus's foreskin. You have his birth certificate and his blood DNA to know that this is Jesus's blood
Yeah.
foreskin. Also,
DNA.
why does this foreskin, this little bitty skin, piece of skin, flesh, has not deteriorated yet? Even though when you die, your
Yeah.
body deteriorates.
It also proves that Jesus was Jewish.
Oh my goodness, man. But again, the epitome, this is like the epitome of blind following. It's like, I can say this and you'll believe in it. Like, even let's just say I am Jesus, right? I am the Jesus, and this was back in Jesus's day.
Mm-hmm.
I'll walk up to you and tell you that I am Jesus, that that God character that people be telling you about, I'm his son.
Yeah.
How in the world that the next city know, or cities away know who you are, because you're not carrying picture ID. There's no way for anybody to identify who you are. So yeah, you are Jesus then.
Yeah. And even then, like, it was such a small little like sect of the world that Jesus, his world was very small and how he existed. And the only reason why it's so grown since then is because of, conquering that the Romans did. Well, Constantinople, or Constantine, fuck him, but Constantine decided suddenly he believes in God, even though he was never really Christian. He was just like, oh, I'll believe in this God on Monday and then this God on Tuesday. And then we'll scribble Jesus in on Sundays. It's fine.
Because that is his day, right? So
That's
we give it
literally
to
how
him.
it happened. Well, actually, it would start off on Saturday, but we're not going to get into that. Anyway, um, so, but that's literally how it happened. Constantine just suddenly decided he believed in God and he was going to stop persecuting Christians. And then Constantine created the Roman Catholic Church. And then they started conquering all these nations. And suddenly Christianity was widespread. And this is the only reason why Christianity is as widespread as is because of death, because of the crusade, because they,
oh my goodness,
for not believing.
One, like, it's so much death that surrounds
Yes.
Christianity. And when you think about it, one of my theories is that the devil that's explained in the Bible, which you don't really hear about this cat too much in the New Testament or the Old Testament.
It's
Most
mostly
definitely
in Dante's Inferno, which is fan fiction of the Bible, but let's not talk about that either.
hey, before I say what I'm about to say, that's that imagination thing again. Nowhere depicts how the devil looks, but yet this cat got horns, back wings, hooves.
Again, that's from Paradise Lost, Dante's Inferno, which are fanfics of the Bible.
Imagination is fascinating, right? So, but one of my theories is that the devil is impersonating God and or Jesus in the Bible, New and Old Testament. Because again, this all loving, merciful, caring God is doing the most devilish stuff in the Bible. And like every single bloodshed, every single war is orchestrated by God in the Bible. And then it was so funny about it is that nothing leave it to a blind follower. Nothing is done without the power of God. You can't breathe. You can't wake up. That alarm clock is not waking you up. It's God waking you up. You can't do nothing without the power of God. But the moment something you don't like, it's the devil.
Oh yeah.
But when you think about it, okay, again, let's roll with that. Okay, stuff you don't like is the devil. But guess what? The devil is employed by God. He doesn't
Just
do anything. He doesn't
people
do
have made
anything
the
without getting the
devil.
permission first. He got to get
Yeah,
permission first.
people
So
have made the devil as powerful as God. They have made him a god in and of himself because he has all of these powers, and they don't see it.
you're right.
They just
God
don't see
said,
it.
"Go ahead." I'm sorry.
I
I
was
was just getting
just
excited.
they literally just don't see that they have made the devil into a god in and of itself, or they either have to say that yes, the devil is a god and he has control over people's lives, or they have to admit that God is in control of the devil and he chooses not to stop the devil and he chooses for people to sin. Like they can't.
Exactly.
It goes
It's
back to
kind
the free will and God's plan debate. Like they won't
of,
together, so they get stuck in this weird like it just those two things can't exist again together. Like they just can't do it.
people choose this whole. I believe choice. Well, I believe not having a choice is an illusion
Mm-hmm.
because the Bible will lead it to you only have two, which is rare. You only have one, really, but the other choice is to not believe. But to not believe biblically is a death sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like either I invoke fear, which is that's what God does. He is a get down on lay down type of character. You're gonna believe in me, or you banished from life,
Mm-hmm.
period, from existence, period. So that's why I goes back to I don't believe, but I one of my theories is the devil is impersonating them because a lot, especially in the New Testament, it's a lot to do with fire. And what is fire? Hell.
Mm-hmm.
You baptism is death by fire, birth by fire.
Mm-hmm.
Revelations, the heavens and all the host in it is going to burn and melt down. That kind of tells you that God loses, right? If the heavens burn down and everything in it melts away, but you calling that the new world, um, that's kind of telling you that God lost, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Go that so it's a lot of again, it's kind of like the believing of the lesser of two evils. Because me personally, well, I ain't gonna say me personally, that's what happens. People blame Eve for what
Everything
earth
it's
is
in.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, what how we live in now. But again, if it wasn't for the so-called serpent that supposedly God sent forth to do what he did, even though he claimed, "Oh, that wasn't me, that wasn't me," but
Yeah.
they blame the serpent they blame the serpent and Eve for everything when the serpent didn't tell a lie at all.
No.
In all in fact, and I say fact because the Bible says this. God was the one straight up lying to you from the very beginning. And the
Mm-hmm.
only thing he said was, nah, matter of fact, the snake said it. No, that was a lie. If you eat this, you will gain some knowledge. That's all. He didn't say, you better eat this. Or he said, go and eat this. He didn't say that. Eve chose to do, to partake of whatever that was on the tree, just like both of them. Well, I want to say one, because I don't even think Eve was even created when he told Adam, you can have everything here, but this tree. I think it
She
was
found
just
out
Adam
everything.
there.
Yeah.
So Eve didn't even know about this freaking rule. She just she just was there. And
Yeah.
she just and she is this thing that we call, which is what they label as a very evil thing, try to scare people for thinking, which is curiosity killed the cat. Well, no, she just became what we call curious, and curiosity births intelligence, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So where is this stuff coming from? Like, blind followers, you still have yet to give me anything about why you believe. You just keep going to passages and passages and passages, which is this whole debt that we all have that none of us asked for. We're paying for our forefathers' debts, and it had nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
And it states, I'm getting the sense of, the more you suffer, the more you become more favorable in God's eyes, which is stated there too in the Bible. It's
Yeah.
stated the more you suffer, the more pain and suffering you go through, that is you, again, unwillingly, because you didn't ask for this debt that Jesus is paid for, that Jesus has paid for. You didn't ask for it. But you, the more you suffer, the more pain you go through, the more you become favored into God's eyes. How none of that sounds loving, merciful, and caring. None of that sounds. It sounds like, again, your God wants you to fear him versus love him. He doesn't care about your love. He wants you to fear more so than anything. But I'm the bad guy for just having thoughts about that, though.
Yeah. So I know that you got to get going, and I'm going to this. Mm-hmm. If God is real, he is an abusive father who rules by fear and control. And that particular passage in the Bible that you were just talking about how God favors those who suffer or whatever, that was written just to keep people believing. Mm-hmm. Believing in a God that's like, my parents used to reference that all the time because we were incredibly poor. We didn't have food. We didn't we were just and they used to reference that all the time. They were like, God's putting us through. We're gonna be rewarded in heaven. And I was like, that's just your way to explain our shitty circumstances and our shitty situation and not blame God for it. But
exactly.
That is what I'm going to end with. So because I could talk about this all day.
Oh, I can too. I will. I thank you, because you are the first female that I've talked to about this, and I always wanted to get a female's perspective on this, because again, like, you're not respected at all in this religion. No. Nowhere near respected.
I'm not religious, obviously, so I think it would be interesting to get like someone like my mom's perspective on it, a female that is religious.
Hey, I would love to have her on.
Yeah, that does. Oh no, don't have my mom on. That does believe in that 100%.
Didn't Jesus take a chance with people and talk to them?
Well, my mom doesn't even have internet or at her house. So, but yeah, so I really enjoyed this conversation. I had a lot of fun. I don't get to talk about religion so freely that often, except within my book series, which talks a lot about theology and faith and deconstructing it. But I think it's always fun to talk about it.
Oh yeah, I find it very fun to talk about, especially when you're not especially when you can actually talk about it versus the other person being mad about what it is that you thought about. Not saying that I'm right or wrong. I'm just saying, hey, this is what I thought about. And I was gonna close out by saying, even if God was to come down here right in my face right now, I can literally watch him come down from the sky. He say this, that he is God. I'll be like, cool, awesome, you do exist. I probably still wouldn't roll with him just because of how bloodthirsty he is.
No, fuck that. No.
Exactly.
I anywhere near someone who thinks I'm less than because I'm a woman.
Exactly. I still wouldn't roll with that cat. But it's thank you. And now I know you real now, though.
I took him off and tell him to get the fuck away from me.
Exactly.
Let's be honest.
Now, because now I hope you leave me alone though, because you shouldn't be just get down and lay down type character. Now, also people, again, give this a try. The next time you read the Bible or decide you want to go through your spiritual religion way or whatever, or find it intriguing as I do, read it and don't translate it. Read each word how it's laid out to make that sentence. Don't add any words, don't take any words out.
Don't interpret it differently.
Yeah, don't try to think about what he's trying to say, because again, if you read, Jesus is purposely deceiving you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not chosen to understand his parables because that's what he said. Mm-hmm. To you, I'll speak the truth. But to everybody outside this door, I speak in parables on purpose. So again, just read it like that. Just see how it goes. See what you get from that point. Because I also find it funny that people are like, oh, well, read it and see what you get out of it. You probably get something different. But I'm like, well, yeah. But thinking about it more, it's like we all supposed to believe in the same God, right? So I shouldn't be getting anything different.
Yeah. Believing in God should be enough.
Yeah. So
but whatever.
Thank you, LM Archer.
Yeah.
LM Archer. Thank you for taking the time out your day to conversate with this old heathen here
yep.
about religion and not getting mad because I have a thought about God.
If anyone's interested in reading my book series, it's called the Take Me to Church series, and the first 3 are out, and the 4th one will be out early next year, and it talks about religion a lot. So you'll learn something probably.
Awesome. Until the next episode. Oh, I appreciate it. I can't wait to do this again. I'm gonna send this out unedited too. So you don't think that I'm gonna cutting you out.
No, it's fine. You can edit it a little bit if you want.
No, I was just going to take out all the parts where I was talking to my wife. That's all. But I'm gonna send this out as soon as I get converted, as soon as I get home.
All right.
But have a good one.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.